Hey guys, welcome to Flowcast, a podcast by Flowout where we chat with successful entrepreneurs, freelancers, and other amazing professionals that are crushing it in their game. We are Flo and Peter, and we'll be your hosts on this audio journey. In this week's episode, we'll talk with Pablo Pinto, Senior Product Manager at MarketerHire. We'll get to know Pablo, who is going to share valuable insights on product management, talent, and recruiting. So without further ado, sit back, relax, and enjoy the conversation.
All right, like Flo said in the introduction, today we're here with one and only Pablo Pinto. Pablo, welcome to our show.
Thank you, guys. Really excited to be here.
Yeah, we as well. So how are you today?
Pretty good. I can't complain. I've been watching a little bit of the World Cup. It's Thanksgiving in the US. So I work for a US-based company. And so today we're off Thanksgiving Thursday and Friday. So I'm enjoying a little bit of a couple of days to recharge and, to just watch some soccer games.
Yeah, I mean, I heard I'm not so familiar with Thanksgiving. I know the concept, but I think it's like a pretty big deal in US, right?
Yeah. It's a major holiday. I think only second to July 4th weekend as far as like travel goes. So most people are off. Everyone usually is off Thursday, and then Friday, which it's Black Friday, which is also I think like known in like other parts of the world as like the day where people go shopping like crazy. You see a lot of like just like people fighting over like the new iPhone or whatever. That happens on Black Friday, which is tomorrow. So yeah, it's kind of customary for companies to shut down for a couple of days. So it's like a 4-day weekend for most people in the US right now.
It's really so crazy with the Black Friday, like people pulling stuff from each other's hands.
Yeah. You always see videos of like people waking up like 5 in the morning, making a line because there's like 10 iPhones for like 50% discount. And so it's like, you always see these people out there, and it's crazy because like some of, most of the US lies in like, obviously in cold areas. So like at this point of the year, like if you live in New York or Chicago, it's like Boston, it's like really cold and people are still making the lines. It's pretty crazy. But yeah, that's part of the culture there.
Yeah, crazy. I mean, we in Europe, we never have those amazing deals like in the US. We have like 20% off, and it's like a huge thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, before we kick it off and go dive deep in the business, I know one of your first project was Football Metrics. So I must ask, who are you betting on this World Cup?
Well, I mean, I grew up in Ecuador, which is where I am now, and I am based in Ecuador now after being in the US for like 15 years. I relocated back here in 2018. So obviously Ecuador is like really, it's very close to my heart. And we're in the World Cup. So obviously I'm rooting for Ecuador. We won the first game, which was the first game of the World Cup, and we have a big one tomorrow. So like that's really it. I do like Team USA to do well as well. So I don't think they have a great team this time around, but we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of surprises already. So let's see how it goes. But you said that you're from Ecuador, not originally from the US. Can you introduce yourself a bit? Like, how did you come from the Ecuador to the USA?
Yeah. Well, I'd say that what has been unique about me, or what has really led to a lot of the things that I've done in life, is I was very lucky to be born in the US. My parents lived there for a few years. I was born there. Then we relocated back to Ecuador, which is where everyone is from. But I was, because by virtue of like being born there, I had the, American citizenship, and that really is, as we can all, understand, it's like a very, it just like opens a lot of doors. So like, just think about like people that I grew up with here, they had to always get a visa or get a student visa or get a work visa, which are really hard to get to be able to move to the US. Whereas I was very lucky because I turned 17 as soon as I could leave home. When I graduated high school, I left. I knew that I wanted to pursue different opportunities in the US. I had a little bit of family and people that I knew, and so I decided to move. I moved to, I remember the exact date, which is March 7th, 2003. It was literally like a few days after the US entered war with Iraq, I think. Like that's like a very, I don't know, I feel like I connect those two things. And so I moved to the US, and I would say up until 2018, I was there. So 15 years in the US. I went to college there. I co-founded a company out of Ecuador, but I was in the US, and I had always been working in US-based companies. which I'm still doing. So it's in some ways I always joke with people that I kind of have two lives. I have my digital life, which is like very US centric because it's the people that I work with, the companies that I work with, it's like all business stuff there. And then as soon as I close my computer, I'm in Ecuador and I have a very different life and lifestyle. So I mean, and this is all, also like due to remote work, right? Like you have the opportunities to do this. So I've been, just been having a great sort of like dual life in that sense, but very, very happy to be where I am today. Thanks to that.
Yeah, and how do you think? I mean, do you think that that growing up in Ecuador and then going to US back and forth, also when you were adult, had an impact in your life and all your like career opportunities that opened up for you?
Yeah, I think there's like, I think everybody would have like stories that would make, the argument of like where you're born, like better or worse. But there are some obviously good things that I always think about Ecuador, being in a country where you see, like you realize how lucky you are by having the opportunity to, to study, to learn. And so like, that's a big thing, right? Like a lot of people in Ecuador, South America in general are very entrepreneurial. So you get to see that firsthand here as well. You get to see people trying to, to build, different things, and it's nothing like internet related, but it's just, it's just like how people are built here. So I would say that that's also like a good way to, to like good things that maybe like, build into who you are later on in life. But then I would say there's also other things that kind of go against you, right? Like obviously the language barrier. Like I didn't really learn a ton of English until I went to the US. Like I had some basics, right? But when I went to take SATs, I was in a very, I would say like comparing myself to American students, it was not a fair competition, right? Like I could never get a good SAT score because I'm just not a native English speaker, right? And so at that point, let's say like that's kind of something that works against you. And then even things like, say, take computers, right? Like a lot of people my age who like live in the States, like had a lot of access to like the early days of the internet, or the web rather. And, in Ecuador, like we didn't. Like I remember like my first computer being one of those like clone PCs, and using like a CD-ROM to like look at Encarta. Like that was like the biggest thing. And then like ICQ was a thing, but like it's always like years behind the US where like all this innovative stuff was happening. So like that also, you kind of feel that you're being held back. And so you have to go to that place, which is okay. Like I want to get out of here just because I want better. I want to learn. So yeah, I would say there's always like pros and cons. And you just have to it's like the life deals the cards that you get dealt, and then you have to figure out how to use them to your advantage.
Yeah, I can definitely relate on that, since during the span of my university years, I lived outside Slovenia as well. I've been to Portugal, I've been to Austria as well, US. I spent like 6 months there. And I also think like seeing all those different cultural dynamic, different like type of peoples, like how do they pursue work, how do they like behave or like engage in everyday life. I think that had like the biggest impact on me as a person, like to grow and then also to see things from another perspective.
Yeah, totally agree with you. And yeah, and I've been traveling a lot too, and I 100% align there, which is seeing how other people live and how other people think and do things. It's like probably, I would say like one of the best ways to really learn and understand different worldviews. And
yeah, definitely. And what do you think your unique skill is that has helped you to come to the point in life that you are right now?
That's interesting. I would say that the one thing that I kind of always go back to is this idea of like being curious, like curiosity. It's I would say like it's the thing that got me to go from like being in Ecuador and like leaving all my friends and family and go to the US, because like I was curious about how things were done there, right? So like that was like you can see it there. Same thing with like being an entrepreneur and like trying to build a company. It's like same thing. It's like curious about how people are going to perceive the things you build, and if you want to do something, like most people will just like take a job, let's say, because like that's safe. But for me, that was like, no, I want to do something different. And then even moving from like some companies to companies, or moving from cities to cities, it's like, I feel like all goes back to that as like a driving force for me. It's like I'm curious, and even to this day, right? Like say like, and we'll get to this in a minute, but like when I'm building software and different things, it's like you really have to be curious about how things connect to each other, how things work. And if you don't have that, then you're not going to be a good builder, right? Like you have to have that like as in your DNA. So I'll probably say that that's the one that applies to like work things, but also like non-work related things.
Oh yeah, that's interesting. And obviously that skill is doing wonders for you. We're gonna move the focus from your background to your current project. You just recently joined MarketerHire as a senior product manager. What's your role there, and what does the company actually do?
Yeah, so the role is just senior product manager. I know that means different things for different companies and different industries, but that really translates to to building different product surfaces and managing teams that build those surfaces. MarketerHire is a network of freelancers. They're expert marketers and expert assistants. So we have two main services. And if you think about, like for me, like one of the reasons why I joined MarketerHire was because I had been working in the talent marketplace ecosystem for a few years now. I'm fascinated by like marketplaces, by network dynamics, like network effects. And I had actually started out in marketplaces that helped software developers connect with each other. So I learned a lot about the domain, software engineering, have a big network with developers. And then I thought, it makes sense that there's like dozens of companies doing this for software developers, because it's like one of the highest paying jobs in the world, and people like aspire to be a software developer. But then when I was talking to the founders of MarketerHire before joining, I sensed the same vibe and the same opportunity for a company to be that one company that really, it's like the winner of the market, like a category defining company. So if you think about marketing, like marketing is, I would say, like where software development was like 20 years ago, in the sense of like how marketplaces are built. So right now, and one of the common things and the things that I like the best about marketplaces is that usually they have this winner takes all dynamic, or winner takes most, right? Like there's only, like typically for any vertical, there's only like one big player, right? There's like no two Airbnbs. It's like Airbnb, and like the next one is like really like way down, right? In terms of, so like usually you see that. And so for marketers right now, I feel like there's a good opportunity for MarketerHire to be that one company. So I joined with that expectation of like, taking this company to that ambitious goal. And like my day-to-day, really in terms of product it's a little bit, like I said, managing teams who build things, but also building things myself. Like I'm a builder at heart. I love building things, and that's the reason why I love working in startups, because you get to do both things. Usually product managers in like later stage startups are not really building, are just managing people, or managing the work, but not doing anything really like tangible.
I see. Just on top of your head, can you give us some numbers? How many people are on the platform now? Is it live?
Yeah, the platform is live. So MarketerHire has been around for 3 years, but I believe it started like late 2019. We have, I would say, like thousands of marketers, and even like I would say a good dozen or more, like thousands of like tens of thousands of like people who come in and want to hire. I don't have the actual number of like engagements or contracts on the top of my head, but it's it's one of those businesses that you really build, like if you're a marketplace, like you're trying to build essentially the connection, right? You're trying to match supply and demand. And I know, and like this company, like since I came in and saw how that was done, you could see that there's a lot of that happening, right? So at this point, it's it's a validated concept. It's a solid company in that sense. There's a solid business behind it. And it's the challenge now, I would say, is like trying to scale both sides of the marketplace without scaling too quickly one of the two sides, because you always have to find that balance and that equilibrium. Otherwise, you'll start seeing churn on either the talent or churn in terms of the clients. And
Can you give us, yeah, go ahead.
sorry, I was gonna say that. So that was like the main like expert marketers is what we call them. And then we also have expert assistants. So that's a very new offering. Like we just started a couple months ago. And what we're doing there is we're also vetting. We're vetting the type of people that want to work in specific functions. So we have marketing, design, and sales. These are the three functions that we vet for, and then we place in usually US based companies or European companies.
Yeah, you just talked about the challenge of trying to like balance the growth on both sides. How are you solving this challenge?
I mean, so like I wasn't here at MarketerHire when they did that for expert marketers, but I've seen it done in a couple of other companies. And one of the things that I'm leading on MarketerHire is the expert assistant product, which is very new. So I'm seeing it all unfold like right before my eyes, which is great. And so what it really takes is like as a product manager, like you want to be involved in understanding like not just the software that you're operating, but understanding the business. So like if you think about this expert assistants, like we have a talent pool, and then we have some leads that want to get matched, and then you have the matching in the middle. So obviously as a marketplace, like the first thing that we've tried to do is optimize for matching. So make sure that we are really good at the matching piece. And then if we can do that repetitively many times and consistently, then we can start then opening the gates for more supply and then more demand. So, we have, and when it comes to the tech stack, it's interesting because I also love like, I'm a big proponent of no code. And usually when you're building products, you want to build things in an inexpensive way at first, right? Because you're trying things out. You don't know if this is going to work out, right? So you don't want to spend a lot of money building things that maybe people don't want. And so we're leveraging like our tech stack is like leveraging existing tools. So you think like Typeform is where we have our forms, right? Very easy to integrate it, create your form, goes to the website, goes to your CRM. We use HubSpot as a CRM. We use Airtable as our data backend, so our database. And then we use Zapier and Integromat as the two like tools connecting the data. And so it's very easy to make tweaks and just continue iterating, right? So like my day-to-day really is understanding how the business is working, like how demand is matching with supply. At the same time, working in that whole tech stack that I explained to you, and making sure that our applicants, our talent, like they're that they have a place to go, they have a place to to apply, that we can actually understand what they're looking for. Same thing with the demand side, and make sure that our sales team can understand how to sell the deal, like how to place the deal, how to move the deals, how to share the information, how to share those profiles. So all these is like, this specific business is at a point where you're like iterating like almost daily.
Yeah, I love this mindset of moving quickly, and our agency could really vouch that no code is the go-to way for that. But just talking about challenges, right? You also have a role at On Deck, if I'm correct. How do you balance those two?
So I'm no longer at On Deck.
Okay.
Yes. My On Deck role ended in August, and then I moved into MarketerHire in September. So I was at On Deck for a year and a half. It was I'd say one of the most amazing opportunities that I've had in terms of work. I wasn't actually doing product. I was more on the talent side, but we were building products and we were building marketplaces in there as well. And literally from scratch, we built On Deck's talent marketplace. And yeah, it was just a phenomenal company. We were doing, I think, maybe too many things that got us a little bit distracted from the main mission. But I would say for a few weeks or months, I think we were one of the most promising companies in tech. Right now the company unfortunately had to downsize, so it's much smaller now. But yeah, it's amazing like year and a half of that company. I went through 3 different roles, from talent from product to programs, and then just meeting amazing people, both like internally in the team, but also fellows, because On Deck has about 12,000 or 13,000 fellows. So these are people who have joined our programs at On Deck, and it's just such an amazing way to meet people who are also building things in tech and are looking for their next thing in some cases.
You got any lessons to share from your time at OnDeck?
I mean, yeah, there's always lessons in all the chapters of different roles. It really depends like where we want to focus the conversation, but I would say like one of the most amazing things at OnDeck was like the fact that the teams were really empowered to build. So you didn't have to wait for a developer or somebody to build things. Like even in the farthest, most remote corner of a company, you had people who could build things. So like that made us go really fast. Like that's one of the, I would say like big, like learning lessons in terms of like continuing to be innovative and try to build, things even at the edges, like not have to wait for like a centralized decision-making committee to build things. So that was an amazing lesson. Sorry, I don't know if I want to go like into the good things, the bad things, or like a little bit of both, like some of the things I learned.
Depends what you want to go to, but we're always eager to listen.
Yeah. Just to be fair. So like that was for sure like one of the most amazing things, like the ability to, to have these autonomous teams and they really built a company that like empowered and embraced that. So that was amazing. So that was like a way to work very fast. Like maybe like just to balance that out, I would say like some of the things that I've learned that could be thought of as like something that, to watch out the next time around. I would say probably growing too fast, too quickly, was not very useful. I joined the company as employee number maybe 130, 140. And in a year and a half that I was there, we doubled. We're actually like, I think beyond 300. So there was a lot of movement in terms of company growth. And that does come, it's great to have more people doing things, but at the same time, I feel like bigger companies, like as soon as you start having more people trying to solve problems, then you start getting into that mindset of like making decisions by committee, having people approve things. And, in our specific situation, that was probably not great because we sometimes like we didn't know we needed to report to the business side or to the product side. Like we're building a talent marketplace. So it's like, it's a little bit of both. And then, we always had to, we had a GM also in our business unit. So we had to also get their buy-in for things. And so like, let's say my first 6 months there, we built a ton of things. My second 6 months, we built very little and I think that was just virtue of like having more people around. And it's like interesting. Like I see like, there's like a few trends, and now that you see a lot of companies downsizing in tech, people are talking more about that, talking more about, how, when you have too many people, again, it's like sometimes the innovation slows down. People are more comfortable with maybe delegating things that they shouldn't, or not doing things themselves because somebody else is around, but then, like you're giving responsibility to somebody else, and maybe that somebody else is not as, as in tune with what you're building. I think like the Twitter example is interesting. Like it's a very, like, I don't know, I think the exact numbers are like insane, because Twitter laid off, I think 50% of the workforce. And then it's typically known that usually after a RIF, usually about another 5 to 10% of people leave voluntarily. So, Twitter, say they let off 50% of the workforce, add another 5 or 10% of, people voluntarily leaving. And then like a week or two later, I think Elon Musk, sent this email saying, you have until tomorrow to stay here under these new conditions of like working really hard. And then a bunch more people left. So like, I don't know, like maybe their team now is probably like 30% of what it used to be a month and a half ago. And so you even see companies, going those routes. And that's a very extreme example. But I think it'll be good to see how that plays out, because there is, I believe, and what we're seeing now is that a lot of companies grew too quickly. And, unfortunately, right now we're in a market that doesn't really allow you to maintain such a big workforce. But at the same time, in my specific case with OnDeck, I was just talking more about like you becoming like, less innovative, or you don't go as fast just because there's just more people involved.
Yeah, thank you for
Trying
being.
to stay lean. Trying to stay lean. Lean and mean is I would say one of the things that, to summarize.
Gotcha. Like, thank you for being so upfront, sharing this experience. Is a good lesson for all of us in startup, in business, and just, you know, as employees as well. Evidently, you have this startup mindset as well, staying lean. Are you working on some of your projects on your own or with a team? Do you have some personal projects going on right now?
Yeah. No, I mean, right now I'm fully dedicated to MarketerHire. I just started a couple months ago. I came in alone. I came in to join a company, but I also recommended a few folks that I had worked with in the past that I think would be a good fit for this company. We've hired a couple, so it's just like a good way for us to, I would say, to bring this new blood into the team. So we have a product engineering team, but yeah, like with that same mindset of like trying to stay lean and close to the problem. Like we want to, like, at least my vision for building a product team is building a team of people who can do usually like two things, which is like managing the work. And so usually product management is talked about being like managing the work and managing the people, right? And then that's kind of like what's, the art and science of product is managing the work is the science part. It's like, I would say, like a little bit easier than managing the people. Managing people is more of an art, and it's definitely the hardest of the two things. But then there's like a third component to me, which is like building. A lot of product managers who are not software engineers are not able to really build anything. Like if you were a software engineer who now can turn into a product manager, perhaps there's things you can do with code, right? You can do things like, at the very least, you can QA, you can write like, unit testing, and you can like help the team that way. But for the most part, most PMs are not software engineers. And so those people are usually managing the work and managing the people. And to me, sometimes I feel like in the startup world specifically, things change so quickly and you have to be so lean and so fast that it requires like this one, like a third pillar of being also able to build. And that wasn't very easy to do, honestly, up until a couple of years ago when no code really like exploded. And now you have, like, I would say like PMs now have this like three things, right? Like you can, and this third component, which is the being able to build, is the component that I'm focusing in the most when I'm thinking about building our team, because again, we want to stay lean. We want to keep people close to the problem, and we want to be able to leverage all these tools. And, hiring a product manager is always going to be cheaper than hiring a software engineer. So that also makes sense. Like, when you think about P&L and you think about how to grow teams, it's always cheaper to have like a group of operators who can maybe learn the craft of like managing people or managing work, as opposed to starting with like the very expensive people who are really good at building things. But then, maybe they don't know how to manage other people. So yeah, it's a little bit complicated. It's evolving. Honestly, I think it's the fact that MarketerHire is like right now so big in the tech ecosystem, it's probably going to be one of those like forces that make things change a lot. Meaning like product management has been roughly the same for like, since it was created, I would say, for the last 20-25 years. I think no code is going to make a big change in how product management like evolves. And I'm hoping to, to be in the early wave of that and like helping, create this new idea of like what product management really means for startups.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I love the concept of staying clean and mean. It's like, such a logical concept, like everyone should take, but it's like once you start building and start growing your business or product, it's actually hard to stay on track, to stay lean, because like you're always overthinking, so many obstacles comes in your way. And yeah, so yeah, a really great strategy, but really hard to execute it actually.
Yeah.
So, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say too, it's also really hard because I think you're right. Like you want to be like, if you're a CEO of a company or a co-founder, you want to be always thinking ahead of like what's next. And if you're growing, you want to be ahead of that hiring talent problem that you're going to have pretty soon, right? And like, I would say that to give OnDeck credit there, the company was growing fast. So like they're trying to stay ahead of that problem. And at the same time, OnDeck was like the biggest moat that OnDeck has is talent, right? It was like we were capturing specifically like 3 types of talent. One was founders. So we were actually going out and bringing founders into the network. So we were getting really good at that. We were also bringing experienced operators. So people who had like 5 or 8 years of experience doing the same function in startups. So very strong operators who can become your, you had a product, your CMO, your COO. So lots of those people. And then we had a third component of people, which were the job seekers. And these were people that were either really good operators in tech and they just wanted to, a little help with like finding their next opportunity, or people who were really successful in other areas, not tech, but who wanted to break into tech. And so we had first dibs at all these people who joined the network. And so obviously, like when we were launching a program, we saw applicants and like say 500 applicants or 1,000 applicants for a program that we allow, let's say 100 or 50 people per cohort. Out of those 50 people per cohort, a lot of times we said, hey, like, why don't we hire this person? Why don't we hire this other person? So sometimes we were even hiring. There wasn't even a role for some people. We just wanted these people in here, right? Because like that is typically how, like in a market that we were for a couple of years, from like 2020 to very recently, it was a market where it was hard to hire. And so you wanted to, as soon as you saw talent, you wanted that person, right? Regardless of what role, even if there was a role, like you want to have them. So it's, it's hard. It's hard to understand when you need to pass up on a candidate and stay lean, and when to add someone, thinking that, okay, I want this person with me. I don't want this person to go with somebody else. So it's really tricky. It's not easy.
Yeah, but that's an awesome concept actually. Like to get the talent like that. That's pretty sweet. Especially like since like recently, before the war and everything, it was like VC funds were flying everywhere. Everyone was getting like so much money. It was so hard to find co-founders or like especially developers. And I feel like a lot of companies made the mistake that they were just hiring too quickly because it was so hard to find the right talent. Yeah. When you have the wrong talent, even when they are good, if they're not like following this lean approach, or if they're not the right fit for a company, they can it can be even worse than if you don't have the right people, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. The wrong hires can definitely slow you down more than if you didn't have them. So yeah, 100%.
And yeah, you work a lot in product management. That's like your main expertise, right? What do you say that like are some core skills every product manager in tech should have?
Yeah, that's a good one. So I would say I started out my career as a founder, and then that was like the first 5 years of my career. I typically talk about my career in like sets of 5 years. So like first 5 years I was a founder. When you're a founder, you typically do multiple roles, and product was one of those roles. I saw it, I liked it, but I wasn't really like fully doing it. When we had an acquisition of that company, I was able to to now like choose what to do, and I actually wanted to learn the most I could learn about like technology and the internet. And so I went to work for early stage startups that were like very small, where I could learn more about, again, just like how things work, and with the goal of becoming a product manager, like a legit product manager. And so that path took me like three or 4 years to get there. And then I finally broke through, got the title, got the product management role, and I struggled. I struggled a lot because product is one of those things where, and I heard somebody say this recently, some of the like thought leaders in product, I forget his name. I think it was Ravi Mehta. It was a podcast with Lenny, I believe. I heard this, but he was saying like, it doesn't matter like how much you know about product. Like the only way for you to learn and to become better at this is by actually doing the reps, right? Like being there and doing, like having more sprints and having more opportunities to actually build this like the skills that you need to be a product manager. Because like I said before, a lot of people think that like knowing software is like the most important thing. And like I would say like part of that group. I felt that I needed to learn so much about software to be a good product manager, that I indexed for so long and like trying to understand literally how everything works. And like, I would say that right now, like if I wanted to become a software engineer, I would be very close because I understand a lot about that. Now, does that help me become a good product manager? Yes, but is it necessary? No. And there's a lot of other things that I would say are important for product managers to really learn. And one of them is like managing people. So like I was saying earlier, there's like, usually or traditionally, there's like two things that a product manager does: managing the work and managing the people. Managing the work, you can learn it, and you can even like you can read about it, and then as soon as you start the role, you can actually like kind of get a grasp of things and like learn it very quickly. But managing people is hard because usually a product manager is like, unless you're a founder in a company, usually a product manager comes into a company when there's like 15, 20, 25 people. Usually there's already engineers in the company. There's already a designer in the company. And then usually the product manager comes at the end and like is because like now you have like all these people that have like no manager. And so like the product manager comes in and is supposed to manage these people, right? So imagine if I come into your company, imagine I come to Flowout today, right?
Okay.
And then they hire me as a product manager. I'm like the last one to join, right? None of you guys have even heard of me. Your CEO decided to hire me, and I'm supposed to come in and help manage the work and then manage you as people. So I can probably manage the work, no problem. But then managing you is going to be a lot harder because I have to build these relationships. I have to build this rapport with the team. I have to understand, and most of these relationships are people that have been in the company more time than you, so they know more about the context of the company. They're usually our software engineers. Like a product manager manages software engineers. Like that is literally what they do. And software engineers, they typically have, they're all unique in the way that they want to work. They have their own like, ways. Sometimes they don't like their style of communication is very different than like, than other people. So it's really going in without any authority. And you're only like the one thing that you have to make things better is the power of influence. Like that is literally the only thing that you have in your pocket to be able to help and be able to gain trust from the team. And so then you have to come in and gain the trust, right? So what happens if you don't get the trust, or if you cannot influence people? They're not going to do the things that you're asking them to do, right? And then you're also as a PM in a very tough position because you usually have somebody to report to, right? And that could be, let's say, a co-founder or a head of product. And then you got to go and like they have some, they want some things done. Then you get those things, and then you tell the people to go do those things. And like, like you help translate the business requirements into like, tech requirements, and then you give it to the engineers. But you have to also like help them understand like what's the value in there, like why are you asking them to do these things, like why is this important for the business? And so that is part of like the role of the product manager. And it's also like, it's funny, like it's usually the PM is usually the last person in and the first person out. If a company starts to like let people go, you don't let go of your best engineers. You let go of the product manager because, at the end of the day, a co-founder is going to say, you know what, I'll pick up on being I'll manage the team, right? Like the technical co-founder. And so it's kind of the situation where like, it's not great, right? It's like, it's a really tough role in that sense. And like, I've gone through many rounds of like being like excited about product and then like disappointed and then excited and then disappointed. But right now I'm in one of the excitement moments. I'm like peaking and thinking, product is amazing. We're going to build amazing things. We're going to manage amazing teams. We're going to grow the team. So I'm in this like honeymoon phase again with product. But yeah, sorry, that was a lot of like stories and context.
No, cool. It's cool. But like, correct me if I'm wrong, but if I understand correctly, so you like product manager is basically like being a bridge between different departments, and then like taking care that all combined departments run smoothly, so the whole product can grow, right? So you're not managing just like specific department, but like you overview the whole workflow of the company.
I mean, you could have a bigger impact in like managing the workflow of a company, but I would say at that point you're either like a head of product or VP, but usually no. Like usually the job is to be the bridge, right? So like, and it also depends on like what the company does. Like it's very nuanced. So,
yeah. Take us through your day, for example. Like how would your typical day look like as product manager?
So in this company, for instance, we don't really have a user-facing product. So the work that we do is internal. So because like what the product manager does is like the product manager should be the eyes of the user, right? Like I should be like that's like my client, quote unquote, is like, who I build things for is the user. I want to make users' lives better. In my case, in MarketerHire, let's say specifically, or in previous marketplaces as well, usually if there's no UI, if there's no actual interface for an end user, you typically are building internal tools, which is like also a very common like area where product managers live in. So, and that's one area that I actually love. So in my case, I am the bridge between the sales team and engineer, or the marketing team and the engineers. So for instance, and let's take Webflow as an example, right? You have marketers wanting to like create like some new filters or new stuff on the blog, right? So I am the person who bridges the communication, and I help the marketing team who are not necessarily like, or let's say like, for as an assumption, like they don't actually understand how things would work necessarily, right, with the technology. So I help them. I go in and I say, hey, what do you need? What is your problem? So I help them define the problem, and then I help translate that problem to the engineer who's solving it. And then I guess it also depends on like what kind of product manager you are, but usually the way it works is that your business stakeholders, in this case the marketing team, they say what the problem is. I refine that problem so that to translate it to what I think the engineer wants, and then the engineer is the one that actually works on the solution, because like they're the ones that understand solutions better. In some cases, you also have product managers who understand technology, who want to get involved in the solution piece, which is usually my case. So what happens is I try to get as much as I can from the marketing team or the sales team or the operations team, whatever team. I scope the problem. I help them scope the problem, and then when I pass it to the engineers, I usually pass it in a way that I'm already maybe like hinting what the solution should be. If there's a tool or if it's a problem that I understand. If I don't understand the problem, I leave it to the engineers. So that's usually the dynamic with internal products. Now, if you're talking about user-facing products, like let's say consumer apps, right? Like if you worked at Instagram or TikTok or a marketplace that had users, right? Like we don't have like a place for our marketers to go to, like they don't have a login or a sign up place. Like there's just that doesn't exist, right? But if they did, then my job would change, right? Like I wouldn't be talking to my internal team as much. I would be talking to the actual users of the product, understanding. And so right now, like say I'm helping build things internally and I talk to a handful of people, but if we launch products that now are actually in the hands of users, then I'm going to have to change and switch the gear so that I can now help those thousands of users improve their lives, like improve whatever I'm building has to be better and better and better every week, right? So it would just change that way. But at the end and then I'm helping and I'm understanding their problems, then I'm translating those problems and I'm passing them into the engineers if they're the ones building, right? With no code is a little bit different, because in some cases, even now in MarketerHire, there are things that if I look at the problem and if I can solve it, I solve it. I don't necessarily push it to the engineers.
Okay, got it. Yeah, got it. And do you have any like strategy or approach to this? Like once you get a problem delivered to you, either for customer or for like internal department, do you actually also analyze it and to like see if it's even viable to like send it forward, or do you just like send it over?
That's also that's a great question, and you most likely will get different answers from different people when you ask this, because the answer is very contextualized to the company, to the stage of the company, to how the team is built. I would say that generally speaking, a good PM is always trying to understand the problem, the why behind the problem, right? So if I get a problem, let's say for somebody from operations, and then they say, hey, I have this problem, can you guys fix it? I would want to there's like the typical framework of like asking the 5 whys, like you ask why and why and why and why and why, to like you really get to the like the bottom, like the root cause of the problem. So oftentimes when somebody thinks they have a problem, they don't really have a problem. Like that's usually actually, like I would say, like the majority of cases. So when somebody comes to me and says, hey, like I need something from your team, I already know that like most likely like 50% of those things I'm going to look at it and say, no, like they don't need this. Or in the other cases, I'm going to be asking lots of questions, like trying to understand like what they really mean about this alleged problem. In some cases, then, you can see, oh yeah, this literally a problem. So like, let's, I'll take it. And then what happens next is also tricky because you have a lot of product teams are obviously like they're built in different ways, but usually you have, so there are teams that built a specific time in their sprint or in their quarter that are dedicated to those like inbound requests. So, and I like to have teams do that. So in my, like, I don't like to have a very rigid roadmap where we're saying, hey, we're going to build this 4 things. We'll come back to you in 3 months with those 4 things, right? It's very unrealistic and not a great way to actually build product. Instead, I like to say, we have these 4 things, but actually we're only going to work on 3 because like the 3 most important things, because I want to leave space of our time to work on these inbound requests, right? Because problems are going to arise. People are going to have problems with the software all the time. And so then I would have to, let's say, take in this problem, a larger problem, then think about resourcing. Do I have the people to do this? How big of a problem is this, right? Like, is this something that breaks our billing systems and I have to bill clients every week? So this is like a really urgent problem. Or is this, building a feature that right now you have a manual way to do it and you're, say, one user who's asking for this, and that's the only person that has this issue. And the alternative is that they have to like, use their email to do something instead of like having a button. So if you think about that problem, usually if it's a problem for one person and it's not impactful for the company, we're not going to build it, right? So we'll politely tell people, okay, great, thank you. Like, I'll take it. We'll see when there's time, but there's no time now. There's other higher priority items. So it's like a lot about understanding the problem, prioritizing against your other things that you have in your workflow, and then tying it to company's goals too. Because a lot of times you want to tie so in product you have like this, like usually like a big chunk of like work is called an epic, and you want to tie your epics to the company goals, right? Somebody comes to me and asks me to build something that is not part of those one of those goals in the company. I'm most likely going to say no. I'm not going to build that for you. Like, it's not a priority in the company for this quarter to build you this interface. So come back, like, talk to your manager, build a case for it, and then when we know that that's a big priority for the company, then we'll consider building it.
All right. So understand the problem, prioritize it, and tie it with the company goals, right?
Yes. Perfect. Yeah. Like those would be like the 3. Yeah. Great summary.
But like all you said now, I mean, you already said this. You were talking about this to be like so deeply immersed in the whole process and bridging different departments and solving the problems. It's definitely true that you need this power of influence that you were talking earlier. To like also like to like the people in the company trust you, especially since you are the last one in the company, right? And how do you go about it in a remote team? Because that's probably even harder, because I don't know, if you're like in office, you can walk in, handshake people, like meet people every day, but how do you gain this power influence on the internet?
I mean, I've been working remotely forever, like since the beginning of my career. So maybe for me, it's not like, I don't think about things that way, like the physical live versus the remote live. I understand that, of course. Like, I've also worked in, in like hybrid companies where like I could have gone to the office if I wanted. So I get that. I get where that like debate comes from. But I would say that even online, there's like so many ways that you can build that trust and relationships, right? Like, just taking as an example, like when I joined this team and I started talking to a lot of the salespeople, just like reach out to them, put a one-on-one on their calendars, meet and greet. They had no idea who I am. They don't understand what I do anyway. But I wanted to talk to them because they are the ones that are using our products, right? So I want them to know that they had support from us. And so you could, like, little by little, you can build that trust from, say, your final user, right? So that whenever, like, and I did that like the first few weeks of joining this company. And then now that I shipped like, a big update to the software that they use, if I screw up, because that's the thing, like, you're always going to screw up. You're almost never going to, nobody should have a goal of shipping perfect software. And so the software is going to be imperfect. It's going to break at some point. But if they didn't know me, they'd probably just be like upset, like, send a ticket and be mad because like I ruined their workflow, right? Now I feel like I have gained some I guess like some flexibility from them. So like, if something breaks, they come with a really good attitude. It's like, hey, Pablo, like this happened, like, can you take a look into it? Then I solve it, and then off they go and to do their own thing. So it's like, I have already seen the results of that in this company and being here for 2 months. And I've literally, and a lot of it also goes back to like building, like not just building new things, but also fixing things quickly, right? Because people don't want to be interrupted from their day-to-day. And if you're a software builder and you're building, say, in this case, internal tools, and then you build something that's defective and it's interrupting people's lives, they're going to be upset, and with all, like they have the all, with all the right to be upset. And so if you're fixing those things, there's also like a lot of teams have like cadences and schedules for like when we fix things. But in my mind, if we broke something, I'm fixing it for you right away. Like it is like our responsibility. And yeah, we can have a whole other hour of conversation about bugs and how do you treat the bugs and stuff. But for the most part, I would say there is lots of ways to build that rapport in your team, showing that you care, showing that you want to, like, even like, it's a very, I would say, like, one of the things that I would recommend like every product manager to do is to get on sales calls. Not necessarily because, like in my case specifically, like sales is one of the teams that I help, but if you get on a sales call to understand what the end user is asking for. So if you work in a SaaS company, right, getting either in a sales call or in a customer success call to really understand what the user is asking goes a long way, not just for you in terms of like learning what you're selling, what you're building in this company, but also with your team, right? Because you're saying to your team, I'm going to spend 30 minutes with you to understand your user. So you're basically saying, I'm going to take 30 minutes of my time to understand you and your life. So when you do that, you create this good vibes with everyone you work with, right? And same thing with engineers. With engineers, it's like the other way around. It's like they want to work independently. They don't want to be bothered necessarily with stuff that somebody else should be bothered by, right? And so you need to understand like when engineers should be involved or not. I love to involve engineers really early in solving problems, but only when I have taken the problem from the end user, scoped it, and then now I'm talking to the engineer about the problem. But I don't want to distract the engineers from being, from talking to an end user or talking to like the manager or whatever who's mad at something, right? Like as a PM, you also need to, and this is a very known practice, you're also trying to protect your software engineers who are the highest paid people usually in a company. You want to protect their time because if you want them to be productive and you want them to build really great things, you really need to give them that space, right? They shouldn't be, support ticket comes in, somebody complains about something in the software engineer shouldn't see it, right? He should only see that in a problem that gets translated from the customer success person through a product manager that now is in a way that the engineer can understand what the problem is and then how they're going to solve it. So yeah, there's just like many ways to build this. And you don't have to, I think a lot of companies are trying to over-index on like making the lunch on Fridays or the have drinks remotely on Wednesdays or whatever. That's great. I'm sure that's great. But it's definitely, there's nothing like walking in somebody's shoes that like nothing compares to that. And you can do that in a remote dynamic or in real life. Like that is what makes people say, oh, this person really cares for me.
Yeah, one of the biggest takeaways from this for me was how delicate working with people actually is. And I'm sure you know that even from before when you were a talent scout in the past. And I'm going to challenge you with maybe a more general question. So how do you find great talent? Where to look for, what to look for, how to attract them?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely something that I think I'm good at. And I love the talent space. I would say there's nothing, like, to me, it's not challenging and nothing great about, like, if you work at amazing companies and then I want to hire you, I'm not discovering anything new. Like, you obviously are great, right? Like your pedigree tells me that you're a safe bet. In some cases, you have to go to hire people like that. Like, you have to hire people that are not going to screw up your things, and that's fine. To me, it's more about, like, I've defined it in my head only, but it's really about thinking about emerging talent, and emerging talent, not just I like the term because it's like emerging from like emerging markets. So like Ecuador, Slovenia, like all these like non-US, non-European markets, because I know there's a lot of talent there. So like that's one way to use the word emerging. The other is emerging as in terms of like somebody who doesn't yet think they can be a great operator in tech, and I am helping them discover that. And some of this actually comes from the work that I did at OnDeck. So we literally had a program that helped people do that. I learned a lot. I actually did the program myself, and I learned a lot about how the program can help you and the impact that such program can have in your life. And I'm a big proponent of like not just mentoring but sponsoring people, right? Like if I know someone in my network here in Ecuador that speak amazing English, that they're crushing it in their job, but they work for, let's say, like a family operated business, and they're never going to be the CEO of the company because the son or daughter of the owner of the company is going to be the CEO of the company. And so this person is like, they've hit a ceiling, right? So it's like identifying people's like hunger and in terms of like, and who are underutilized, right? So like those were probably two things where I'd say I know a lot of people in this world who have a lot of hunger and who are underutilized. And it's like I'm always thinking about how to use this. Like at OnDeck, that was kind of like my day-to-day. So I was literally doing that all day. Right now, I haven't been focusing on that as much, but I'm always thinking about that as a problem. And yeah, in my case, I would say like the talent scout piece plays purely in the startup ecosystem, right? Like I'm not going to be a good talent scout for finding you, I don't know, a consultant for the oil and gas industry. Like I have no clue. But if it comes to finding operating talent for startups, yeah, like that's a good place. And I would say early stage also is that's where I've built my career, and that's also what the area or the niche where I would say I can, because I know what it took me to get to where I am. I know what it takes. I can see it in somebody else, and I can see it. Like the more I can spend time with somebody, the more I get to see those things. So yeah, I mean, hopefully, at the same time, I'm a founder at heart, so it's very likely that I'll found a company again. It's more of a when, not an if. And I think it might be in the talent side if that's I've been working in talent, like I said, for a few years, and I really love the space.
Are you noticing any trends in what attracts and what motivates great talent lately? Like what's great talent looking for when looking for a job?
Yes, I would say that a lot of the stuff that I'm hearing nowadays is very different from the stuff that I was looking for. I can't remember exactly, like we had a lot of data on this from like building the talent marketplace at OnDeck, but I remember that for me, and it's always different for people, but there's usually like a what's it called, like a wheel, say like a donut, like a pie chart of like different things that you index for when you're looking for your next job. And it's usually one of the things that people want best, or like they're looking for the most right now, is values. It's like the values that that this company has, like the values of the founders. I've honestly, and that's great. Like I'm not saying that it's not, but in the people that I know have really done well, usually that's not like the highest thing they're thinking about. They think about other things. Like they're more interested about on like learning from the founders, or like learning a new function, or learning a new, like indexing and learning to me is like, has been like the biggest, like most impactful thing that I've done. And great that the values align, but if the values didn't align, that's also okay. Like I don't have to look for a company that is exactly aligned with what I want. Like, there are probably some like areas that you say, oh yeah, I'm for sure not going to do that. Like if you don't believe in whatever, like drinking alcohol, or if you don't believe in betting, like, potentially like what some of the things that I can think are maybe people don't want to work on those things, that's fine. Choose not to work in those companies. But like for the most part, like most people are trying to do something good. Most people are trying to do good by the employees. Most people are trying to make profitable companies. So it's like 90% of the times you're going to have like somewhat aligned values. And maybe this is a little bit of a contrarian thinking here, because I know that I saw and I met a lot of people whose very first thing was my values need to align with the values of the company. And so in some cases, sometimes it's hard to find, it takes a time to find somebody who aligns fully with you. In the meantime, you're like losing opportunities. So that is for sure a trend though. Like that was your question, right? Like a trend for people to look and want, that is a trend. And yeah, like that is definitely something that I would say maybe even surprised a little bit. That is the case. Like that's like so important for people. Like I get that's important, but maybe not the most important thing.
I see. And are you familiar with any cases where the values of an employee and of the company weren't really aligned, but the collaboration, the relationship was still very successful?
I think that happens most of the time, to be honest with you. Like if you like to like look at FTX, right? Like right now, like you can throw that example against me right now. Like it's like a really shitty founder. Yeah, I mean, there are really shitty founders. I'm not saying there aren't, but most of the founders are trying to do something good. So my point is, you will find someone, like I would say, like if you're looking, it also probably depends on like the focus of your career, because like I am focusing, as I said earlier, I'm more focusing on people who want to kickstart their career. So I think like in that specific bias for me, like in the market, it's really like less about values, more about the opportunity. I could see why, like if you're very mature in your career, you have 20 years of experience, you definitely want to vet the founder and you want to understand that you're getting into a company that's doing great things, because you don't want to end up, at 40 years old, like maybe you don't want to end up like being the COO of FTX, like bad move, right? So I would say that, to be fair, like to answer that question, it's probably easier to think about it that way. Like it depends on where in your career you are, and to maybe have these different like desires or wants aligned in different order. I guess it's also like, it's just like it depends on what angle, what niche of the market you're looking at.
And going like from really general wide view to a really technical question, how do you set up the vetting process when looking for new candidates?
So I've always been a fan of contract to hire as a form of work. I've been on both ends of that dynamic. So contract to hire, meaning let's start with the contract, here's the scope, fixed time. And if it works out, we'll continue the relationship. That's usually how I hired people. And that's usually how I've also been hired full-time in companies. There's nothing better than like knowing somebody through that dynamic. I can go hire you just, without just like interviewing. And that's the thing too, like people can be really good at interviews and not be great operators, or the other way around too. People could be really bad interviewers. Like they just could be like, you wouldn't hire them only based on the interview, but they would be amazing people to work with. And so the interview process as it exists to me means nothing. Having like 5-6 rounds of interviews and then having a take-home exam or whatever, and then have the person present. That is, I think, the right solution for a company that, like, if you're aiming for big numbers, like if you need to hire 50 or not 50, but maybe like 15 people a month, because you're a fast growing company, you need something faster. Fine. That could be like, you have no choice, right? You can't have the founder spend a month of work with someone and to see if maybe they hire them or not, right? Like that's not a good move for, if you're scaling. So yeah, again, going back to, I would say my purview or like my niche, which is like early stage, the people that you hire early stage are going to make a big difference, right? They like, if it's the wrong hire, they can really slow you down. If they're a great hire, they can really make you shine and scale faster. So just like this contract to hire to me is like the best way to really see what people are made of.
Yeah, sounds great. I guess good advice for all the startup founders out there. But then another thing in the later stages, pivoting in the career is a buzzword lately, or maybe not even lately, for quite a long time. How do you suggest people go about a pivot in their career if they're staying in the same company or changing the company? What are the biggest things to look out for?
Yeah. So career pivots, right? Like you said.
Yeah.
Yeah, career. I've also helped a lot of people go through that process. A lot of people, and even myself. I've actually done 2 pivots myself. At least that's how I count them. When you're pivoting, I would say there are 3 main levers that you have. So you're either changing a company, you're changing a function, or you're changing an industry. Those are really the main 3 things you're changing. And the more of those levers that you're changing, the harder and the riskier the pivot is, because you have to put yourself in the shoes of somebody hiring, right? If I'm like, if I'm hiring, let's say somebody in product, and like somebody to join my team, right? And they are from a different company, obviously, right? That lever usually is like the lever that almost always everybody has to use. But if this person was not a product manager before, and this person has not worked in tech before, that's a very risky move for me to make, right? As much as I love this person, as much as I can believe in their potential, that's a very risky pivot. And if I was a hiring manager, it's hard for me to really get behind that hire, because 3 things are risky. This person has not done any of these, has not done any of these 3 things. Now, if they tell me internally, hey, this person wants to move into product, and I've known this person, right, from like working together, like as a stakeholder or as something else, sure, I might be the first person giving them the product manager role, but they know the company and they know the industry. So it's not as risky anymore, right? Because they know the domain, they know the founders, they know the context. So all I got to do is teach them the craft of product management. So you got to think about it that way, right? So if you're trying to pivot, try to pivot, or try to not move those 3 things at the same time. Again, the more you move them, the riskier the pivot will be. So if you can get away with only using 1, great. 2 is most common. Most people will have to change a function in a company or an industry in a company. So yeah, just think about it that way. And I think that hopefully that framework will help you understand how risky or how to mitigate the risk of a pivot.
Yeah, perfect. And just last question on this talent and recruiting topic. What are some ways that you use to monitor the performance of the people? Obviously, there are many factors that come into that. How do you go about that?
Like before hiring, or like after managing, or like when they're in the team?
Yeah, actually, when they're in the team, when they're already at the company.
Oh, when they're already in the team. I mean, I'm very big on giving people autonomy. So I am everything except for, like, I could not be blamed for being a micromanager, because this is like definitely one of the things that I don't even know how to do that. Like, I just don't like it at all. So all I want people to be independent, autonomous. I want people to ask questions. And then I want people to come to me with a story of a problem and a potential solution, and sometimes even like what they've done, right? So there's like, I don't think we learned this, which is amazing, because like the whole company was like, built on this, which was, if you see something, say something, right? And then that's like a very common, like if you guys have been to New York or the US, it's like a very common, right, like thing there. But like now we said, we're like, our MO was like, if you see something, say something, and then do something. So like those kind of people, and you can tell right away, right? Like you don't have to have like a dashboard of metrics, or like you don't have to have like a weekly call. You can just you can easily see the impact people have when they see a problem, they talk about it, but they also solve it. So if you're in early stages, you want people to have that agency, that ability to understand, even if there are things that are not in their job description. And in fact, those are the things that give me the most signal that somebody is amazing at their job, or they're amazing at this company, or they're amazing fit, when you see them doing something that they're not required to do, right? So that's how you really, like, these are all, like, I would say, like, less scientific ways to see, but it's really all about behavior, and being able to see that behavior.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because like before I got into the startup world, so I go to business school, and it's like everyone in the business school, I had like a short period of time that when I wanted to be a consultant, that's like a couple of months. And there is really strict, like, education is important, and then you do just what's required from you. But then here in the startup world, it's like I see like the most important thing is that people are really willing to learn, willing to put in effort, and yeah, show dedication, even if that's not the main work. So that's really can relate in that. Now we're like approaching the end of the podcast episode, and I want to scope out a bit. And since you have such a rich background, like growing up in Ecuador, moving to US, being a founder, joining a bunch of amazing companies, if you look back to your younger self, would you have done anything different? Would you give yourself like any special advice?
I mean, for me specifically, I have an answer to that. Like in my case specifically, like I know that I would have wanted to learn, like I would have invested in learning computer science more. Just because like I also don't know who said this, but maybe it was Mark Andreessen, but like there are more computers than people in the world, right? And so you're obviously not going to learn all these languages to communicate with people. You might as well learn the language to communicate with computers, which are just going to continue to grow and grow and power everything we know of. So, I would say that I grew up in going back to like the things we said, like maybe the things that like don't help you when you don't grow up with all the opportunities, or like in all the, like say in like what we call the first world, it's that, right? Like people who, like, had I grown up in the US or in the Bay Area, like I know that I would have been exposed to computers, and I know that I would have like been really into them. It took me a while to understand that that's the thing I wanted to, like, that really I have passion for. And so, yeah, I've been playing catch up for 10 years, like trying to patch those holes of like knowledge. So like, that's obviously a specific question to me, or a specific thing like I would say to my younger self. But I feel like this question usually is also good for people to hear, and like just like general feedback, or like, if they hear in the podcast, like what they could do now to maybe avoid something in the future. I would say that like maybe I have an answer if you're trying to be a product manager. Like I will leave it at that, because like I don't want to give like life advice to people, because I'm definitely not like equipped with that. But like for a specific group of people who want to be product managers, I would say I index a lot on learning and like wanting to know the most about software engineering. And it's like, you don't have to. Like I did that, I got there, and then I realized that, it does help me, and it's great that I know that. But it took me close to 5 years to pivot from being, from like a business role that I had, to like being a product manager. And I think what held me back was that idea that I really needed to be almost as good as an engineer so that I could have a conversation with an engineer, and that was not required. So, if give it a shot in less than 5 years if you're trying to pivot to product manager.
All right, love it. Yeah, great insight. So cool, Pablo. It was really nice talking with you. You gave us a bunch of insight today. It was almost a lecture on product management. So love talking with you, and I look forward to talking
for sure.
somewhere in the
For
future.
sure. Sounds good. Thank you, guys.